Hello guys and girls and everyone in between and outwards. A few things to talk about before I get into the actual intro and everything. So first of all, I'm being a little quiet because literally everyone in this house is asleep right now and I don't want to wake anyone up, especially since I'm, going to be ranting about the Brave Little Toaster of all things for however so long, and that's kind of embarrassing. Also, I have I'm reading my script off of my laptop over here right now. So if I look down a lot, that's why I don't usually do video essay type videos or whatever you'd call this. I'm not sure if this can be counted as a video essay. I don't think it's anything enough to be called that, but yeah, so if I'm looking down up there, that's why. Also, I made these little wood pins today. I don't know how well you can see that one, but I made, and in case I make it one and a selfish one, and I really like them. So, let's get into it. You may have heard of the 1987 movie The Brave Little Toaster. You may or may not have heard it also had a sequel. You may not have heard it also had another sequel where they go to Mars. When my brother and I were younger, we watched The Brave Little Toaster, but for some reason that I still don't entirely understand, we watched the two sequels a lot more. I recently decided to rewatch all of these movies because I just kind of thought it would be interesting, I guess. And I was surprised by how much of the first one I didn't really remember or didn't really have a reaction to, while with the other two I remembered a lot more. My brother and I kept going back and forth oh, do you remember when this happens at some point during this movie? And there were times where oh my god, I remember that happening, as it the thing happened. I was also surprised that these movies give you so much to think about, and I don't mean that in these movies are super deep if you actually think about it, guys, because that's not true at all. These movies aren't good. They aren't bad, but they are not good movies by any means. They're fine, but that's it. What I'm saying is I just have so many more thoughts about The Brave Little Toaster than I thought I would, because while these movies aren't particularly special in any way, they just have so many weird things packed into them that you wouldn't really expect. So that's kind of what this video is about. I'm not gonna go super deep into the history of these movies or even too much detail about what happens in each of them. It's just I just want to talk about and point out things that I thought were funny. I will talk about I will go through each movie, but not extensively. To clarify real quick, even though these movies were made for children, this video I'm making is not. This video would be very confusing and also boring for a child, except for the part where I say swear words. So, also, I will be questioning why and how things happen in these fictional stories. So if you're one of those people that just cannot handle that but still click on videos like this anyways, and then comment things oh, it's not real, why do you care so much? Even though when people like me make videos like this, it is purely for entertainment and we aren't actually taking it that seriously. Just click off. I'm not sure why you were here in the first place if you can't even fathom the idea of having fun. Now, I'm just going to start by explaining each of the movies, and after each one, I will just kind of be talking about a few random things that I noticed or just wanted to talk about that specific movie that I did not go through in the explanation of it.
I hope I didn't make you wait. Mammy! Mammy, I'm coming!
The Brave Little Toaster's main characters are Toaster, Lampy, Kirby, Blinky, and Radio. They live in an abandoned house where their master, Rob, used to live as a kid. His appliances really loved him, and he loved them back for some reason. Also, something about his child design just looks weird. When we see him, at his current age, he looks fine, But, when he's a kid, he just looks so, something's off. He's just so floppy. I don't even know how to describe it. He doesn't look like a human. Anyways, he moved out one day, and they never saw him ever again. When they see that the house is on sale, they decide to leave and go to the city to find him. After going through lots of forest, whatever all of this was, and getting stuck in a shop for parts, they eventually find the city and his apartment. But right as they get there, Rob and his new girlfriend Chris head back to the old house because they're both about to head off for college and he needs to find some appliances that are, easy to find without paying much. before he left, his new appliances heard him talking about going to get the old appliances, and they get jealous, so when the old appliances eventually do end up there, they all throw them out the window and into the garbage, where they get picked up by a garbage truck and eventually end up in the junkyard. Rob sees that his old stuff isn't at his old house, so he goes back home to figure out what to do instead. He and Chris end up going to the junkyard because this TV was his as a kid, so this TV was already friends with the old appliances, so when they got thrown out, he didn't like that happening, so he made his own custom commercial to convince Rob and Chris to go there. Which, by the way, in part of that commercial, he ends up bringing out this photo. Rob finds his old things, but because of this magnet's insistence on getting these specific things onto the conveyor belt, Rob actually literally almost ends up dying. He gets saved by Toaster jumping into the gears of the machine and kind of, you know, stopping them from keep turning, and his, you know, the stuff stops working so it doesn't crush him and turn him into a tiny little box. Once he's back home, he fixes Toaster up and everyone's reunited. Happy ending. Something I've seen people point out about this movie, which is actually kind of what made me curious to start rewatching these in the first place, is that they just mention death so much in this first one. The air conditioner in the beginning gets angry at all the other appliances and just fucking explodes. He gets fixed by Rob later, but like still.
Kirby, what are you gonna do, suck me to death?
Toaster has a dream about falling into a bathtub and dying because, you know, that flower died. Blanky screamed, "They're killing me," while he's getting dragged into a hole by some mice.
Help! They're killing me!
They did death fake outs for both Blanky and Lampy at the same time at one point. There's this part where they're all getting dragged down by quicksand and they're all, you know, horrified for their lives, except for Blanky, who says, "I'm not scared," in like the eeriest way imaginable.
Try to untie yourself! I'm not scared.
They watch a blender basically get brutally murdered right in front of their eyes. You know, like, from their perspective, obviously, it's not like that as human beings, but, you know, like to them, as appliances, they're watching this other appliance, like, get ripped apart. You know? There's a song where all these cars in the junkyard are getting compacted, and most of them are getting put on there, not entirely by force. They're already like really sad about stuff, so they don't really seem to care, but like, you know, the magnet is picking them up and putting them on the conveyor belt towards the compactor thing, right? But there's this one that just goes up and drives itself onto it, and then of course Rob almost gets crushed by the compactor, and then Toaster has to just entirely fuck himself up to save Rob. And again, this isn't like a deep movie or anything. I don't think it really has much to say about this theme of death, especially since it doesn't really add much to the story. It's just a really odd thing that you wouldn't really expect to be in this movie, and that's what most of this stuff is going to be. These movies are just so generic, and I don't mean that in like a bad way, like, you know, they keep your attention well enough, they don't drag things out for too long or like whatever. They're just basic kids movies, but there's just like little random things in there that just make it interesting to me. At this part in the script, I just say, "I think I may be hyperfixating on the brave little toaster, guys, please help me." Also, just keep in mind through this video that I wrote most of this script between like 1 and 5 a.m. Another thing that I noticed pretty quickly that also lasts like through all of these movies is they just have periods, usually during the beginning, where they just make non-stop jokes and puns about the characters. You just keep thinking that they'll run out or just give it a rest, but they don't. Also, this is definitely more prevalent in the first movie. There's a little bit of it in the second movie, but not as much in the third one, I don't think. But these guys just cannot stop arguing. Like, they're all just so sick of each other for no reason. They just start shit out of absolutely nowhere. It's sort of annoying, but it's also funny because they're just all so petty. So, which, by the way, if you haven't like watched these or whatever, most of the characters are adult coded, except for Blanky, who's like a kid under 10, and then Toaster, who I'd say is more like tween to teenager-ish in, you know, how they act. That makes it funnier because these characters that sound and for the most part act like adults will just start bullying this literal baby for no reason.
Go find your own place to sleep, you little fuzzball.
Margaret! Hey! What are you, blind? It's a line.
Come on. I'm not the master. Go snuggle somewhere else. I'm trying to get some sleep. Now go on.
Anyways, second movie, The Brave Little Toaster to the Rescue.
I hope I didn't make you wait. Mammy! Mammy, I'm coming!
In this one, Rob is now in college and takes care of some animals with this other guy, Mac. And all the appliances, except for Lampy, stay in the room with the animals instead of in Rob's dorm. The animal characters include Ratso, Alberto, Maisie and her kittens, Murgatroyd, awesome name by the way, and Sebastian. Mac is secretly working with someone to take all these animals away to a lab where I assume illegal things would be happening to them. All of the non-human characters find out about this and try to find a way to stop it. Also, at the same time, weird things have been happening to the computers across campus, which includes Rob losing an essay he almost finished just a few days before he graduates. So they, being Ratso, Toaster, Radio, and Blanky, go through the vents until they eventually end up in the basement where they find this old dusty computer named Wittgenstein. Wittgenstein. I think I said it right the first time. That knows about Mac's plans. He wanted to tell Rob about it, but he has a lot of viruses that stop him from being able to do that. All he needs is a very specific rare tube to be able to defeat the viruses, so Ratso and Radio go to find one. They bring it back but get into a petty argument and it ends up breaking. However, Radio mentioned earlier that he also had that tube in him, so after guiltily walking away after what happened, we see that tube roll out from behind the box he walked behind. For some reason, they're a lot more touchy about the word death in this movie, because when they go and see him lying on the ground with his back open, Blanky goes,
Radio gone?
which is crazy coming from Mr. They're Killing Me, but anyway, so you give that to Wittgenstein, and he gives Rob his essay back and tells him what's going on, which by this point Mac has already hit the road. Rob grabs Chris because she has the car, and annoyingly with the help of the appliances, they stop Mac and get everyone back. The story gets on the news, and now the animals are going to new homes, except for Ratso, who stays with Rob and Chris, who actually get engaged by the end of the movie. Happy ending. Okay, so I was looking at parts of the wiki for this video because, and I didn't pay much attention to this line, when I watched the movie, but there's this part where Wittgenstein says he's been in the basement for this many nanoseconds. I'm terrible at reading out numbers, I'm not even gonna try with this, okay? And I kinda wondered how long that would be, but I didn't look into it. But after looking on the wiki, they point this out, and apparently that only adds up to like an hour and a half, which is really funny to think about. It says on the wiki that a logical explanation for this could be attributed to the viruses damaging him, but I really doubt that. I think the writers were just like, yeah, we'll just have him say how long he's been here in nanoseconds, because he's smart, without realizing how small nanoseconds really are, and thinking that no one would look into it. You fools, we did look into it. This is very important information for all of us globally to know. Now this for the most part stretches from the first movie to the second, so I'll just mention it here. Watching these movies now in 2024 is really funny because these movies were made in 1987, 1997, and 1998. And something about these movies is that all of the characters are outdated, which makes sense because Rob had them, when he was a kid. But for some reason they paint almost all of the newer, at the time, technology as being mean and rude and bad. And so now obviously all of that technology is very outdated. And so now watching it feels like you're seeing a movie written by the boomer final boss.
I hope I didn't make you wait. Mammy! Mammy, I'm coming!
Okay, so I know I said I wasn't going to be getting too in detail about these movies, but for this one I feel like I have to because it's just so ridiculous that I couldn't really, maybe if I tried to, but I just felt like I really couldn't summarize this shortly because there's just so many things. It's not like a movie where everything's all over the place or anything. It's just there's just so much stuff happening. I get I don't know how, you'll see. So, the brave little toaster goes to Mars. In this movie, Rob and Chris have both just come back home from the hospital.
I know! She's bringing home a sausage!
Because Chris just gave birth to their new baby, Robbie. Think I would have gone with another name, but sure.
By the way, make sure to pay attention to whether I say Rob or Robbie, because Rob is the adult and Robbie is the baby.
All of the old appliances our main characters live in their new house along with some newer appliances, including the microwave, ceiling fan, and hearing aid left in the drawer by his old owner, who apparently this hearing aid belonged to Albert Einstein, which I have so many questions about that I don't even want to get into because it's just so stupid, but it's just like, there's so many layers to that. Unless he was lying, but like they never implied that. They were just kind of doing that thing that people do in stuff made for kids where they're like, oh, we need to explain why something's smart, and then they're like, okay, well, it's related to Albert Einstein in some way because he's the only smart person to ever exist, apparently. Anyways, one night the hearing aid is acting really suspicious. He's in the attic and talking to someone no one else can see or hear, saying that he'll be back up there the next night. Everyone else heard this and agreed to keep an eye on him. For some reason, they keep an eye on him all day and like exhaust themselves doing so that by the time it gets darker out, they all just tire themselves out and end up falling asleep, even though he said he was going back up there at night. Anyways, luckily Toaster does end up hearing him and gets everyone to go after him. Ahead of them, though, is Robbie, because he saw the hearing aid and got curious and started following him. A beam of light comes down from outside the window, shining on both Robbie and the hearing aid. For some reason, instead of, getting the baby out of the way into safety, they all decide to attack the hearing aid instead. And then Robbie gets lifted up into space.
Also, before we watched this one, my brother kept talking about how anytime he thinks of this movie, he just thinks of this one part that he remembered of Robbie getting beamed to Mars, because it just looked really weird. And so we finally watched it, and why does he look like that?
The hearing aid says that beam came from Mars because he wanted to go live there. But they only had enough energy to send one, so now the appliances need to find a way to go to Mars, get Robbie, and come back by morning. Because obviously Rob and Chris can't know that their appliances are alive and also that their baby got lifted up into space. So they figure out something that involves the ceiling fan, with the microwave being used as a power source, and leave Ratso at home to make sure everything runs smoothly, because he can't go into space because he's an animal and he'd, die. They get to Mars and meet Tinselina, who is a rare old Christmas angel who got there because she was put into a satellite by some dude. Then some guard toasters take everyone to the leader of the Mars appliances, which, by the way, it's just more appliances up there. There aren't, aliens or anything, luckily. Their leader is this, gigantic fridge that just lets them take Robbie back because he didn't really care about him in the first place, considering he wasn't supposed to be there. They explain that the reason they're on Mars is because they're all the same brand of appliance, Wonderlux. The Wonderlux appliances were made so that they'd break very easily, so people would need to keep buying them. Even though that doesn't really make sense, because when there's a crappy brand, people just buy from a different brand, but okay. But the appliances didn't like this idea, so they made a rocket and went to Mars. Which I'm not really sure how they did that.
Wonderlux appliances were quite adept at the principles of rocket propulsion.
Especially considering how big their leader is. How big was that rocket? Because he is huge. Which I'm not even sure why he exists in the first place, because who would need a fridge that big? What was he made for? There's only one of him. Anyways, now that they have Robbie, they're pretty much all good to go home. Until all of the other appliances show them this missile they made so that they can destroy Earth. Because they hate humans, since, their entire existence is because of how greedy some people are. Now, obviously our protagonists don't want this. They love humans because their owner is so kind. But there is a way to stop them from killing literally everyone. Apparently on Mars they have an election every day, so all Toaster needs to do is go up against the fridge and try to convince literally everyone that maybe don't. But they get into a debate about whether humans are good or bad, and eventually everyone ends up voting for Toaster, which causes the fridge to melt his insides, which did he kill himself? What was up with that? What does that mean? What did he do? But and then he invites all of the main characters into himself.
Sorry I keep doing this, but this movie's just like so weird. I didn't know how to explain it in the original video, but there's just like this huge ocean inside him, and there's like an ice tray that they all go in and use as a boat until they find this like big iceberg.
Revealing that he actually isn't a huge fridge, but another hearing aid that is controlling that fridge somehow. And yes, they pulled a "you're my long-lost twin brother" in this movie. The hearing aid inside the fridge is hearing aid number 1's brother. Can't make this shit up. And I'm not sure about the implications here. Because, okay, here's the thing. I like wrote this into the script, but I'm just gonna go off script, I think. So, like, we can assume that all of these appliances are all shown to be sentient. All of them. And so you can assume that sentience probably comes from, like, maybe when they are finished being made, right? Like, finished being made, put together, maybe, like, when they come out of the box, like, something like that, you know? So what is up with this fridge? Why can he be controlled by another appliance? Was he ever alive? Was he ever he? Is it an it? Is this fridge, like, did this fridge ever have a personality and sentience like the other ones? If he did, what happened to him? If he didn't, how? And again, why does he exist? This huge, gigantic fridge, like he's ginormous, and then he like still isn't even sentient. Like what is he? Why can this little guy control him? Cause it's not like something where like maybe their like wires were like got tangled somehow or something, and so like the little hearing aid's brain went into the big fridge's brain, because like there's nothing shown like that. Like the hearing aid just kind of exists separately inside of the fridge. So like what was he even doing to control him? I'm so confused. I don't understand what was going on, because like the one thing that like all of these movies kind of like operated on, I guess, is broken with this really weird thing. Anyways, I'm gonna get back to it, but I just like I can't. I'm so confused by that. Hearing aid number 2 now agrees that not all humans are bad and wants to go live on Earth with everyone else. And so does Tinselina. So they all start heading home, but literally like right after that they realize that the missile didn't actually get turned off, even though I thought that was the entire reason why you had this election and debate. Like, wasn't that the entire fucking point? And then you just did, like, no one did anything about that? So Toaster shoves hearing aid number 2 into his toaster seat and jumps back onto the surface of Mars, sacrificing their life on Earth for, you know, everyone to not die. Wow, that's so sad. Toaster will never be able to see his best friends ever again. Oh no, wait, Tinselina sacrifices her hair and parts of her dress so that the microwave has enough power to go back down and get Toaster and the hearing aid. And so then they can all go back home again. By the way, the microwave was fueled by like organic matter, being popcorn for most of the movie. But then, you know, because Tinselina is like so old and rare, like her hair is actual human hair and her dress was made out of some material I don't care. And so those were organic, and she was able to put those in the microwave, and, you know, it worked. They go back home. Rob and Chris don't know anything ever happened. Happy ending, good for them. Can you tell which one of these movies I disliked the most? So I already talked about most of the weird stuff with this movie in the actual thing, but here are some other things. Lampy says trans rights. Because when Rob and Chris come home with Robbie, Lampy goes,
I'm sure that he, or she, or it, will be very nice.
"This is the support our community needs." Also Robbie is like really ugly. Like, I know I'm bullying a baby, but it's a fictional baby, okay? He's just really ugly. Like, I don't like him. Now that we've got that over, I can just talk about whatever I want to. This may get a tad unhinged. So, Rob. Why did fucking Rob from The Brave Little Toaster shape my taste in men? I'm gonna get this out of the way first. I do not, and never did, have any feelings for the specific fictional man. okay? I will repeat, I do not have a crush on him. I know it sounds like I'm making a joke, and I actually do, but I promise I don't. If you're my friend, if you are my friend and you are watching this, I know that would be entirely in character for me, but I'm being so for real right now. That being said, just because I do not and have not ever felt any sort of way about him, that does not mean that he isn't the blueprint for what I am currently attracted to, which is this brand of guy. I'm gonna like put it on screen, and obviously that part's just like appearance wise because all these characters have pretty different personalities. But if I met a dude who was admittedly a little weirdly attached to his old childhood appliances, I would be Chris, okay? Because that's cute, that's adorable. And if you think that's weird, you're actually being like so ableist right now, because being overly attached to inanimate objects is actually commonly associated with being autistic. Am I saying Rob is autistic? Yes, I can say that, because if you haven't figured it out by now, I am also autistic. That's what this means. The infinity rainbow, that's what that means. Yeah, that's the only trait he's ever shown, but also he isn't the main character. We don't see him a whole lot. We don't know what his day-to-day life is like. Also, like, seriously, for a second, I'm joking. If you didn't see the huge letters on screen, I am joking. And assuming that autistic people can't make jokes is a stereotype, so like if you didn't catch on that I was joking, you're actually being like so ableist right now. Also, I want to emphasize how kind and caring Rob is. Like, he's literally so sweet. He fixes up that old air conditioner, even though, like, you know, that house is being sold to someone else. That could have been someone else's problem. He didn't even throw it away. He fixed it up. And then the conditioner like cried. When his mom suggests that he takes the lamp that's in their current home to college, he says,
Well, what are you gonna read by then? Thanks, Mom, but I'm not gonna take your stuff. Come on.
and in the second movie, he cares so much for the animals that he and Mac are taking care of. He met all of them when they were in bad situations and when other people were ignoring them. And this bleeds through in the third movie, where during the beginning they pan over towards the house and there's a sign that says Dr. Rob's Pet Clinic, which, you know, obviously means that he has a pet clinic now because he graduated college and got a job that he went to college for. There's more, but we have to move on to the next section before I can talk about that, so I'm going to close off this section now. So yeah, I don't have a crush on Rob Brave Little Toaster, but if I met a person exactly like him in real life, I would. Insightful stuff. Now, what I've been waiting to ramble about this entire time. Rob and Chris are the couple ever / pause. Something I didn't expect, like, at all from these movies is how much I adore Rob and Chris's relationship. From movies like these, you might expect them to just be like a very basic couple, but trust me, they are not. Now, in the first one, they don't really do much. They are just kind of there to be there. It is actually pretty funny how they are in the first movie versus the sequels, because in the first one, after Rob literally almost died in like one of the worst ways, Chris just goes,
Would you cool it? Now get down here, you're scaring me to death.
and then walks away. While he's literally like still on the conveyor belt, by the way. Now, obviously, she probably didn't really entirely understand what was happening, but that's still a really funny reaction to that. Also, before I get into their relationship in the sequels, you might have already noticed if I've shown you like clips or images of her from the first movie versus the other two, but I do want to acknowledge that unfortunately they definitely did whitewash Chris in the sequels. Maybe you could say that like she might have had a tan in the first one or something, but I really doubt that for a few reasons. The first one is that there's no real reason to think that besides the fact that they changed her skin tone later on. Because just as she is, like, there's nothing to imply that she wouldn't have that skin tone naturally, you know? And the main one, which I think definitely proves that, is that they didn't just change her skin tone. They also made her eyes blue and made her hair just a little bit lighter as well. So yeah, that sucks. I don't really know why they did that. But, you know, back to the point. While they're still super cute regardless, the thing that sticks out about Rob and Chris is the movie that they're in. This movie isn't about them. It isn't about Rob, it's about the appliances and animals. And these movies aren't written particularly well, right? Again, they're not written too badly, I'd say, but you know, they aren't like written particularly good. They're fine. That's it. You know, average 90s kid movie. But for some reason, their relationship is pretty well written, in my opinion. So for example, I'm gonna go through a pretty like good chunk of this movie that I didn't talk about in my synopsis of it the first time around. So the movie starts with Rob and Chris in their car. Chris mentions their anniversary falling on the same day as their graduation. So, you know, they aren't like married or anything at this point yet. So Rob doesn't actually really know what this anniversary is for, and Chris knows that. She's a little annoyed, but she brushes it off. And as I mentioned later, Rob loses his essay, which obviously makes him very stressed. A little later in the movie, Rob and Chris are taking care of the animals, and Rob leaves the room. While he's out, Chris grabs a bag of cat litter, and it accidentally ends up tearing and then kind of just spilling everywhere. So she decides to use Kirby to get rid of it. Rob sees this and gets upset because he's told her before that Kirby can't handle litter. Then she gets upset because she still doesn't really understand why he cares so much about his old appliances, and says something similar to, do you care more about your old stuff than me? You know, going back to the whole him not knowing about what the anniversary is for thing. And then she leaves. And here's the thing, these movies are very like 1990s American, right? Like the art style, music, characters, tropes, and I think maybe you could even argue like at least bits of the story. They're all just very average American 90s cartoon things. So with that pattern, when it comes to this type of argument between these characters, you might expect a kind of like, women, am I right, sort of attitude towards it, even if they don't like say anything like that. They didn't have to go full 60s sitcom housewife.
I'm upset because you don't know why I'm upset.
But you might expect them to frame it that way just a little bit, right? But they don't. When she leaves, he immediately regrets it and says something like, great, I lost my essay and now I've lost my girlfriend. And then what we can probably assume is something like the next day, they're talking to each other just in his dorm, and she says, I've forgiven you, by the way, and he thanks her for that. And then after that, he talks about their anniversary because he finally remembered what it was for, the first time they met, I think. They were both just irritated in the moment, and then after thinking about it for a bit, they probably realized that they could have handled it a little better. Yeah, they were upset at each other, but they didn't handle it like kids or even teenagers. They handled it like adults because they're adults, which is so realistic. Like, they feel like real people, and I really love that. I think that's what makes it work for them, because they just feel so real, and not in a, like, a negative way. They're written realistically in a positive way of what realistically a good relationship is. It doesn't mean that you never get a little upset or snappy at each other, but it means that if you do, you know how to sort it out and handle it correctly. Anyways, more cute stuff. When Rob finds out what Mac is doing and goes to go get Chris, to try to get her attention, he does the throwing rocks at the window thing, but accidentally breaks the window. But she just asks him what he's doing. Like, she doesn't even sound angry, just genuinely confused. And she gets down immediately and lets him explain himself afterwards, because she knows that whatever it is, it's extremely important, because, you know, there's no reason he would do that otherwise. And, as I said at the end of the movie, they get engaged. Rob proposes to Chris and gives her a ring, which would be, you know, fine and cute enough on its own, but Chris gives something to Rob too. At first he thinks it's also a ring, but then she opens the box. Okay, so you know how Radio took out his tube to give to Wittgenstein in the movie? Rob found Radio without it, and, you know, because those tubes are so rare, he knows that he'll probably never be able to find one, and he thinks that Radio just won't ever work again. But Chris knows how much he loves his old stuff, so inside the box, instead of a ring, is that tube that he needed for Radio to be able to work again. You know, she doesn't understand why he cares about these things as much as he does, but she still supports him because she loves him. In the third movie, after they get back inside from the hospital, he reveals that he literally made a brand new rocking chair from scratch for her because of their new baby, and he made it for her. And then Chris asks,
When did I last tell you I love you?
and he says,
About 30 seconds ago in the driveway.
and then she says,
Then you're overdue. I love you.
and then he says,
I love you back.
in the sweetest way imaginable. That actor, that voice actor, needs every award ever because I am sold. I'm calming down a little bit, but like. And another thing interesting about these movies, these sequels, is they just stay in perfect continuity throughout, which I'm not sure I've ever seen coming from sequels that were never supposed to happen, you know, from sequels to movies that were never really supposed to have sequels. Like, the first movie was not made keeping in mind that they would have a sequel because they definitely had no idea there would be a sequel. The sequel was released 10 years after the first one was. I'm not sure if the people making the second one had any idea about the third one. I think that they might have had some idea considering how close they came out. They were just a year apart. But, I don't know, exactly what stages were where, so. But either way, these movies were not supposed to be one big story. And they aren't. For the most part. They don't really have much to do with each other story-wise at all, except for Rob and Chris. They still have this arch throughout of Rob and Chris dating before college, them dating in college and then getting engaged at the end of college, and then at some point getting married, settling down, and then having a baby together. And I'm not just saying that continuity-wise, there are other things that keep in continuity with each other. Again, mostly in the sequels, because there aren't any new characters brought in at the end of the first movie. But, like, in the third movie, Ratso is living with Chris and Rob, like they said, and they even call up Wittgenstein to help them figure out how to get to Mars when they need to figure that part out. Which, by the way, Wittgenstein is in a museum when he's called, and that is because in the second movie, a very small character, like side character in that movie named Charlie suggested it when they found him in the basement. They, as in like the other human characters, not the appliances. Charlie is a human being. I'm just saying that because I feel like a lot of movies like this usually don't keep in continuity like that. Like, I know this isn't a fair comparison because The Land Before Time has like a lot more sequels for some reason, but like in The Land Before Time, like there were like continuity errors throughout all of like a bunch of the sequels. I'm not sure about like, I couldn't count them, but like I remember that there's like one where Sarah's dad like learns to not be abusive, but then in another movie he kind of goes back to that. I think that's what it was, but like you get what I'm saying, like they just didn't really, they kept the characters as they were and just kind of reset things with each movie in a way. Okay, so anyways, all of those other things are just the sequels, but Rob and Chris tie all of the movies together. Now, obviously all of the main appliances are in every movie, but they don't really have the same arc that Rob and Chris do. They don't really change much as characters besides being like a little less bitchy to each other by the end of the first one and then staying like that for the other two. I know the writers probably weren't doing this on purpose. They probably weren't paying that much attention. They probably just kept Chris because there's no reason to cut her out, and going from dating to engaged to married to having a child is like how things would traditionally progress. But I just think that the end result is really sweet. Honestly, I would watch a whole movie about them. I'm not really sure what they'd be doing, but I'd watch it. So I want what they have, okay? I want what they have. Excluding the baby, I don't. Gross.
I hope I didn't make you wait. Mammy, I'm coming.
Okay, so I don't know how any of this happened. Like, I do adore Rob and Chris, but like, I don't necessarily like these movies. I don't dislike them except the third one, but I don't exactly like them either. Usually when people write like long, passionate video essays about something, it's either something they really like or really hate. And I've done that too. I'm working on a video essay about something I really love. Little hint, upcoming video. But anyways, and I've also tried writing video essays about things I don't like. I haven't finished any of those, and I don't know if I will. But I feel like people don't usually write video essays about things that they're just like pretty neutral on for the most part. I know I sound like I have like lots of opinions about these movies, which like I guess I kind of do, but I mostly only pointed out things that like I wanted to talk about. There's plenty of other things that happen in these movies that I just didn't really have anything to say about. I swear these movies are driving me insane though, because it's like my brain has decided this is my new hyperfixation for however so long. I don't even like these movies. Like I have never had a hyperfixation on something that that didn't make me like really happy thinking about it. Again, like I'm not like unhappy about it exactly, but it's just more like, really, like this is really happening, like this is what we're doing right now. The movies are just so unremarkable, but here I am making remarks about them. Too Long Didn't Read, movie weird. Well, I think that's all I have to show you. Oh wait, never mind, check this out.
Frankenstein is searching for all my vials, searching for regions heretofore only dreamed of by man. Woo! That was sort of good. Like that. My memory banks remain stroked. And by an expert, I feel something happening inside of me, and I can't keep it to myself any longer.
Like, comment, and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Get lots more quality content like this, but not really, because I don't really think I'll ever do something particularly like this ever again.